And now, Deborah Kobylt live.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for Deborah Kobylt Live. We have a wonderful guest joining us today, Miriam Kruishoop. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Deborah. And you just pronounced my last name like no one else does. It's perfect.
I got it. I got it. And right behind you is the poster of your latest film, a short called Estilo Americano. Why don't you tell us quickly what's that about? Because then we're going to go to a clip from the trailer. Phenomenal film. Loved it.
Thank you so much. It's a very timely film about a Mexican-American family divided by politics, in this Trump era. And obviously, Latino families have gotten a lot of scrutiny, Latinos in general. And I felt it was really important to tell the story from their perspective. And also, really how divided people are, in today's America, within that community, but really any table in America. So I created these characters that all represent a different point of view, which is also really about identity. And they come together over Thanksgiving and the whole thing sort of implodes. But it's got a very interesting twist at the end and also a positive message.
Absolutely. But most of your films are like that, right? I mean, they've got a message. They've got something that they want to talk about in terms of social justice and what's going on in the world. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. I mean, that really drives me as a visual artist and as a storyteller. And that's what I'm here to do. And, I try to find things that may be uncomfortable to talk about and give voices to stories that don't get the platform. So,
Yeah, talking about a voice, if we have the clip ready, I'd love to show the trailer from your latest film. Do we have that ready to go?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Guys, this is ridiculous. Guys, this family's toxic. I'm out. Siéntate!
I think we can bring it down. We can bring it down. That is incredible. Christian. Wow. You know what? It's like a lot of dinner tables, I have to tell you, especially this year at Thanksgiving. First of all, everybody's Thanksgiving was smaller anyway, right? But everybody got together with their families. And especially with the election that had just happened, so many families had something like that going on with them, right? Because politically we all differ. So tell me about that. What motivated you to do this film?
Well, I did another Latino film 6-7 years ago called Green Card Warriors. And, I'm an outsider insider, right? I lived in America for a long time, but I'm from Europe, from Amsterdam originally. And you sort of see the things that are going on in this society and you're like, why aren't people like speaking up about it, right? And I have, because of a result of Green Card Warriors as well, I have a lot of Latino friends and, we had a lot of conversations like, you're being bashed by this Trump guy. Like, why don't you guys all get together and just rise up against it? And then it's like, yeah, but we're all very divided amongst ourselves, right? And, being Puerto Rican means something else than being Mexican or being El Salvadorian. So, I did a lot of research and had really interesting and difficult conversations. And I was like, I have to write a story about this and somehow create a family where these different perspectives are represented. And, that's sort of what I do. I see these things going on and I want to highlight them and give them a voice. So
I'd also like to mention that Green Card Warriors won Best Director at the LA Latino Film Festival and at the New York International Film Festival. That's another fantastic film to see. But, you've lived all over the world. As you said, you're from the Netherlands. You've lived in Hollywood. You've lived in New York. You're back here in LA. I'm from back east originally, and I find, at least through my experience, that some of the racial tensions aren't quite as deep back east as they are here. I mean, here it seems as though every block you go down there's another problem and an issue where people aren't seeing each other for who they are, but rather what they look like. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there are problems in the world everywhere, but I think definitely Unfortunately, America has been completely in denial about how racist it really is. And, you know, living in New York, because you're more on top of each other, you're forced to deal with one another. And I always say, like, traveling by public transport teaches you a lot and also makes you a lot more tolerant, because you're in this confined space. And, you know, in New York, you're surrounded by people and all these different ethnicities, which is what we love, right? Here in LA, I mean, things have been bubbling, and it's almost like anything, how different it is here, it's a little bit slower. And then when it surfaces, it really implodes. Look, I think LA is a fantastic city. It's a city.
Wonderful.
You know, like you, like we decided to live here, and it's amazing. It's diverse and everything. We love all the different aspects of the culture, whether it's Latino or African American, we embrace it. But, you know, we have a lot to figure out. And I think talking about history and being more open and accepting and just saying, own up to it. Like, look, we messed up. This is what we did. We have to come to terms and have these conversations, but also tell stories about this, you know?
Yeah.
It's one thing to like change the education and everything, but people need to know it and acknowledge it and talk about it.
Look, it wasn't taught in school. Certainly wasn't taught in school for me. You know, you had to get out of school and figure out what's going on. And at least if we teach it in school, and if we just visit each other's neighborhoods, it's not a scary, weird place, right? But I don't really have the answers. What do you think can be some of the answers? Because this is how you work. This is what you do. Through all the work that you've done, what do you see can be helpful? Just, you know, a dialogue, talking about it?
I always go into the neighborhoods where other people don't go to. So I think people are people. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. We'll have to make a journey, because I do the same thing. I think because as a news reporter, I've done it so many times. I have no fear going somewhere. In fact, I'm very comfortable and I enjoy it. I usually find my way into a neighborhood restaurant. That's always a great place to start, don't you think?
Totally. Like I was eating pupusas in Pico Union for like a couple of bucks, and I had the best lunch ever. And you meet people. And so when everybody would say, no, make a left turn, I want to make the right turn. So that's something that's clearly within you and that's within me, right? Being very curious. And I'm also interested in people. I'm interested in culture. And you find that everyone is the same. You know, even when you look different, we all want the same. We just have slightly different cultures. And I think traveling, living in different places, you know, I went to school in Paris, I lived in London for a long time, I lived in the Middle East. And, you know, it just forces you to become open-minded and see we have so much more in common than that separates us. But, you know, fear, you know, is all because you don't know, you haven't been there, you don't go to the neighborhoods, you're surrounded by the same thing. And you and I look for that, right? And we confront it within ourselves as well. A lot of people don't. And it starts in schools and at home, and obviously also through media, you know.
Tell us a little bit about how you shot this film and how you got the family together. Like, what was the whole process? I mean, I know it wasn't a family, they were primarily actors, but what was the process like?
Well, the process was that, you know, because it's so dialogue driven, you need to have some really killer actors, right? So I really had in mind, like, I want to try to get really top tier Latino talent who knows how to deliver great performances, but also who connect to it personally, right? And emotionally. So we did that. We've reached out to these people and everybody wanted to do it, which was really fantastic, from Lydia Porto to Antonio Jaramillo. You know, Teddy Garces was there from the first hour. And so that's really great. And also they could put a lot of themselves, like filmmaking and the way I work is very collaborative, right? You don't have all the answers. And only because you have a fantastic team with, you know, a producer like Ellen, who gives you freedom, and a really good team, that's how you pull it off. So I work with my cinematographer, David Frederick, who's awesome. We broke the whole thing down because basically you have people for over 20 minutes stationary at a table, right? So how do you make that still very visual and cinematic? You need to make sure the camera moves. So that's why in the editing, Todd Sandler was also amazing. So it's about what's not being said. It's about the reactions and making sure the camera keeps moving. So it remains very dynamic. We shot it, you know, with the Sony Venice camera, which is like super dope camera that shoots 4K. We shot it on anamorphic lenses, and we really wanted to give it that visual feeling. And again, cinematic feeling, it's a collaboration. You know, it's not just because of me, it's because of the whole team.
I also love the fact that it's a short. I find short films to be very powerful and impactful. Did you do it as a short intentionally?
It's so funny because normally sort of short films are out of my comfort zone because I used to do a lot of short films in film school, but I've been really into long narrative for a while. But it's sort of like a double choice because if you want to do a feature narrative, you need a lot more money. And I felt there was such an urgency in telling the story. And I'm like, you know, it's easy to turn this into a feature because the characters are very rich. There's a lot of backstory. But I think you're right. There's a lot of power in doing this in a short format. And so I was like, if I want to get this done this year before, you know, all the shit hits the fan, I need to make a short and get it up now. Because it has a message, right? And it is very timely.
What do you think? You live in LA. What do you think about what happened with George Floyd this year and the protesting, the peaceful protesting primarily, in my opinion, if you look at what's happened around the country, about what that said about how people felt about race relations in this country? What do you think?
Look, it's a lot of bad stuff needs to happen and for the good to surface, right? So
that's absolutely right. Yeah.
You know, first of all, it's incredibly tragic that this continued to happen in our country. It's also incredibly tragic that we had a president who said that Colin Kaepernick is a terrorist and a white guy with a gun is a patriot, right? So we got it all wrong. The peaceful protesting, I mean, is something that Martin Luther King started. It's I have so much respect if you've been of color and you've been marginalized for such a long time, and to be able to be, you know, not use violence and to go out there continuously, you know, that's really powerful. With the looting, you know, when it first happened, I understand it. You know, I'm not going to be doing like, oh, but all the looting and immediately condemn it. It's just an expression of anger and frustration. And, you know, it was just necessary to happen to some extent. Thankfully, that now has calmed down. Of course, I don't endorse it, but, you know, all these sentiments, these frustrations that are really centuries, you know, of pain that people have gone through and just the inequality that's here. And that's one of the first things when I came to America, I was like, wow, okay, I come from the most progressive country in the world, but it's like, damn, it's a lot more conservative here. Wait, you're talking about gay marriage and abortion? That's still like on the agenda to talk about? We figured that out a while back, you know? And yeah, to just, people have to fight for equal pay or trying to get a loan to buy a house, and some people can't because of the color of their skin. Shocking. In the land of the free? That ain't free, that's not a democracy. So everything that's happening right now is urgent and very important, and I'm happy, you know, things are moving forward.
What inspires you most as an artist? And you're not just a filmmaker, you're a visual artist, you do all sorts of things actually, but what inspires you? Is it what happens in the news? Is it what you see at the street corner? Is it all the above? Let me know.
It's really all the above, but I'm a storyteller, right? So I'm interested in people because I believe everyone has a story, especially the people that are you think that are furthest removed from you or you don't expect. You're going to talk with them, engage with them, and you're like, oh my God, this is mind blowing, right? So I'm really looking for, let's say, the people on the street. I'm interested in them, you know, these movements that are happening. So really, I'm inspired by culture and by people.
For people who want to get out into the world to maybe be more a part of the world, how do you suggest they get out there and do that? Because I think we're still too segregated. People just stay in their own little hood. What would you advise people to do just so we could get to know each other a little better? You know, watching a film like this helps. Green Card, that's a terrific film. I hope people look that up. But what can we do to sort of come more together, in your opinion?
That's a great question, Deborah. And I think we're all trying to figure this out as individuals and as a nation, right? Look, public transport is very important to go around, right? Number one, and make it very affordable or free. Now, California used to have fantastic public transport that then was completely, abolished by, I believe, the oil and the tire and the car companies. So
absolutely 100%, because if you go back to the 50s, you'll see all those beautiful automobile ads, right? with a freeway that was practically empty and these gorgeous cars. You're right. And then it was nixed. But because we could have had the same system that they have back east, right? With trains and buses and even subways, but they didn't do it.
I mean, if you go to South Central, right, you see all these rail tracks that are overgrown, right? And now we're like small pastures and whatever. So we had it. So I think public transport, making sure that travel is affordable, encouraging people through through communities, through schools, to also the importance of schools to take people out on field trips and travel further, because it's more easy than ever. Of course, we have COVID, but once the vaccine is working and we feel more secure. So I think all those things are really important. Teaching other languages, I mean, I grew up in Holland, nobody speaks Dutch. So I was taught very early on to speak foreign languages. Again, that allows you to communicate with a lot,
Isn't that very telling? Most Americans only know English, and maybe they take like a year or two of something in high school, and by then, let's face it, it's too late. And so many of my friends, once I started traveling, who are European or wherever they're from, they know a minimum of 4 languages and they're fluent. I also say start young with multiple languages in school. I hope that they bring that back, because at least if we know 2 languages, right, at least it opens the door more for us to communicate with one another. That's everything too.
I totally agree. Look, Holland is very small. You drive 40 minutes, you're at the German border, you're near the French border. So we had to speak other languages. Yeah. But we learned it early on. So and as a kid, you're a sponge, right? So it's not that difficult. So I think in America, what has worked against it, that, you're such a large continent. It takes a long time to enter another country where the language is different, except, Mexico, but Canada, they speak English. And a lot of people have never left their state, let alone left the country. So,
well, that's a big one too. Travel. Now, a lot of people do not have the money to travel, but all you have to do is get in the car and just go across town, and you'll find a whole different culture. LA, that's what's so beautiful and diverse about us here, and most cities, right? There's a little Tokyo. There's all sorts of little communities. And I always say, just park there and go find a little restaurant, a mom and pop one, if you can. That's a great way to start, don't you think?
Oh, Deborah, I love that about cities like New York, LA, London, Paris. I make it a thing every week that I go to another neighborhood and go to like the Japanese supermarket and buy food, or go to a bodega and buy there. And I do that every week with a different kind of food. I just found this small Tunisian, Moroccan hole in the wall, and it's just divine. But I enjoy that. You see, I like everything that's different from me. I love that. I look for that. A lot of people, they don't go beyond the hamburger. So it needs to be stimulated, and understand you get rewarded. You find this new food, you find this new culture, you find these new movies. I'm all about that. And
I think at the end of the day, people really would prefer to get along. I love the show The Voice, and I'll tell you why. Because they are turned around, right? They don't know what the person looks like, and they're belting out this great tune that sounds like, something Aretha Franklin would have sung. And they turn around, there's this short little white lady, you know what I mean? And it's like, wow, it's not what I expected. So if you just almost sometimes close your eyes to what a person looks like and just hear them, we'll learn so much, right?
Deborah, it's so funny. Whoever's listening now, my close friends, they know I was hooked on The Voice. And I think exactly for that reason, I would record every Monday and Tuesday. And then if they go into the finals on Wednesday, and I'm like, I got to stop this because this is taking up way too much of my time. But the reason why I loved it, it's, okay, you see amazing talent, but it's so unexpected. And to see the reaction of the judges, and it's like, wow, I just love this. But that's how I look at the world, and I think my parents opened the doors to that, and living in a country that's progressive and open-minded, and also surrounded by so many different cultures and different languages, that definitely helps.
Very briefly, how did you grow up? Did you grow up with parents who, exposed you to the world and different cultures? Because Europe also had its set of issues back in the day. I've been to Holland a few times, and I know that it's a very progressive place and welcoming to so many. What was it like growing up there?
I think Holland is a very privileged place, and my parents were very open. They really stimulated to pursue whatever I wanted, whether it was in sports or they were also very cultural, and we traveled a lot. And so I was very privileged, and I'm very aware of that. I went to great schools. Played music, played sports, then went to art school, film school. So that was great. I feel I made the most of it.
Well, you were curious. That's what you need. You just need to be a little curious. Open your eyes and be a little curious. Talk to me about what you're working on next. And first of all, how can people find this current film, Estilo Americano? How can we find that? Because I know it's recently just come out.
Yes, so it's on Los Cortos. It's a platform that supports Latino voices and stories, and it's also going to be on Shorts TV, which is a distribution platform that's through AMC actually for short content, really, really great high-end content. Then there's my website, miriamkruishoop.com. You'll see my visual art trailers from our other stuff, press, etc. And then, of course, we have the website for our film, estiloamericano.net. I'm working on several things. I'm working on a big sculpture. I'm working on a new installation. I'm working on multiple film projects, a TV project. I'm really focused on getting this project Juveniles Off the Ground, which is actually a true story about two young girls that meet at a juvenile detention center in Baltimore. One girl is African American and the other girl is half Native Indian and white. And they've done some terrible things, but it really is as a result of, growing up in the inner cities, get no guidance from parents, and how messed up the system really is. But it's really a story of hope, that you can forge a friendship and a bond with anyone as long as you're open, and you can actually help and save each other. And sometimes you only need one person who believes in you.
How beautiful. Do you ever do talks? I mean, because I'm hearing you speak to me and I'm thinking, gosh, you would have such an incredible influence over kids in school, particularly kids in high school or even young people in college. Have you shown your films at schools? Because they're very powerful.
Thank you. And I don't think of myself as a great speaker or anyone who's great in front of camera or anything. But, I am very passionate and I believe in what I do. And I love sharing that. And I think, first of all, I do that through the work that I make, but like being with you and you being so well informed and open and engaging, also that brings out a side of me where I really love being in dialogue. When we had Green Card Warriors, I actually spoke together with Richard Cabral on certain occasions at community colleges. And when Edward James Olmos, because he had the Latino Film Festival, gave me the award, I actually did a couple of workshops in schools. And I really, really enjoyed it. I do love it very much because I love younger generations. I love having older friends and I love having younger friends. So
right, we were talking about that. My friends could be 9 or 90, and you learn from all of them. Yeah. You learn from them all, Yeah. So anyway, I've really enjoyed having you on. Is there anything that you'd like to tell our audience that I didn't ask you, or ways that they could find other works of yours?
Not really, Deborah. I think we covered a lot. Again, I'm more here to promote like that we have to engage with one another, right? And I think art and doing things like this is a great way to do it, and just hope everyone stays open-minded and give each other a chance and listen, and just keep in mind we all want the same thing. We're not that different.
No, it's more peaceful living that way. It really is.
I want my neighbor to be good because then I feel better, right? So, yeah.
Miriam, I'm so excited to have had you on. So Miriam Kruishoop, Estilo Americano. It was a pleasure having you on. And I look forward to having you back, especially when you complete one of your other films or one of your art installations, because I'm a big fan of your work. I think you're really terrific. You've got a lot to say and a lot to show many of us. So thank you so much for being here. And everybody, you can find Miriam's work on all of her social media, and we will post that after our show, and we'll also post it once we post some promos too. So thanks everybody for joining us today on Deborah Kobylt Live. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube. I think this just went out live on YouTube, in fact. And in terms of our audio podcast, any platform where you get your podcast, you'll find us. Just put us in there, Deborah Kobylt Live. And by the way, have a great holiday, everybody. Whatever you celebrate, just reach out to a neighbor, because all of us could use a little of that, right, Miriam?
Absolutely.
All of us. And I always like to say, those people who sort of look like they've got it all together and they don't need a hand, sometimes they need one more than you'd know. So thank you again for joining us, and everybody, we'll see you next time. Bye, Miriam.